For this video, we'll be discussing about Java arrays. So objectives for this video. So at the end of this video, the student should be able to, number 1, declare and create arrays. Number 2, access array elements. And number 3, determine the number of elements in an array. And number 4, declare and create multidimensional arrays. Introduction to arrays. Suppose we have here 3 variables of type integer with different identifiers for each variable. So we have int number 1, int number 2, int number 3. So to assign, so that's the declaration. Now to assign the numbers 1, 2, and 3 respectively, we use number 1 equals 1, number 2 equals 2, and number 3 equals 3. Now what is our observation here? As you can see, it seems like a tedious task in order to just initialize and use the variables, especially if they are used for the same purpose. So let's say, for example, we have 10 variables, so we are also going to have 10 variables for initializing the variables. Now in Java and other programming languages, there is one capability wherein we can use one variable to store a list of data and manipulate them more efficiently. This type of variable is called an array. An array stores multiple data items of the same data type in a contiguous block of memory. So, magkakasunod yung memory, divided into a number of slots. So in this example, we have number, and then these are the values. And inside the memory of the computer, they are actually contiguous. Now, how do we declare arrays? To declare an array, we write the data type followed by the set of square brackets and then followed by the identifier name. So for example, int, then square bracket ages, or we can also do it this way: int ages and then square bracket. In fact, for me, I prefer the second one. Array instantiation. After declaring, we must create the array and specify its length with a constructor statement. So definitions. Instantiation in Java means creation. So if we instantiate, we actually create. So constructor, in order to instantiate an object, we need to use a constructor for this. A constructor is a method that is called to create a certain object. So we have already covered this in our previous video. So array instantiation. To instantiate or create an array, we write the new keyword followed by the square brackets containing the number of elements you want the array to have. So for example, int ages, that's the declaration, and then ages equals new int 100, that's the instantiation. Okay, or I think more conveniently it could be written this way: so int ages equals new int and then 100. So take note of this syntax. So this will be the syntax that we will be using most of the time. Okay, so next, so once we instantiate an array, so again, array is composed of contiguous memory address, and inside the array object contains the length and of course the values of the array, and the variable is pointing to the first element or the address of the first element. Array instantiation. You can also instantiate an array by directly initializing it with data. For example, int array, so open, close, and then equal to, inside curly braces, the elements of the array. So this statement declares and instantiates an array of integers with 5 elements, initialized to the values 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So these are the values of the elements of the array. As we remember, array is actually a variable with several elements. So these are the elements of the array. So let's take a look at the sample program. So this program creates an array of Boolean variables with identifier results. and then this array contains 4 elements that are initialized to use to the values true, false, true, false. So Boolean results, that's the name of the array, and then open and close square bracket equals, then curly brace, true, false, true, false. So these are the values of the elements of the array results. And then on the next code, creates an array of 4 double variables initialized to the values 190, 80, and 75. So double, so again, we can use the square bracket first before grades, but personally I prefer this format is equal to, so the same, open and close curly braces, and 190, 80, and 75. Now here is an array of strings. Strings day, open and close, is equal to Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. So that's an array of strings. Now how do we access an array element? So we have learned that an array is composed of several elements. But how can we access a specific element? So to access an array element or a part of the array, you use a number called an index or a subscript. An index number of subscript assigned to each member of the array to allow the program to access an individual member of the array. So we can access an individual member. So the index begins with 0 and progress sequentially by whole numbers to the end of the array. So 0, then 1, 2, 3, up to the end of the array. Note elements inside your array are from 0 to the size of array minus 1. So if let's say we have 10 elements, then the index will be from 0 to 9, or 10 minus 1, that's 9. So 0 to 9, that will be the index numbers. So here's an example to access an array element. For example, given the array we declared a while ago, so ages. So ages 0 equals 10. That means 10 is assigned to this index, or that's the first element. So we are assigning a value. Now in the second example, we're actually accessing the value of ages 99. So we're accessing the last element of the array. We're trying to retrieve its value, access its value. Here we are trying to update or replace or set its value. So note, once an array is declared and constructed, the stored value of each member of the array will be initialized to 0 for number data. So the reference data type, such as strings, they are not initialized to blanks or an empty string. Therefore, you must populate the string arrays explicitly. So for strings, they are not initialized to blank string. So again, you must explicitly place the initial value. Accessing an array element. So the following is example code on how to print all the elements in the array. So this is one of the advantages of using array, because if you want to, let's say, retrieve the array, so this is called traversing, then we can make use of a loop, because again the indices of the array are sequential values, so our code will be shorter. So here integer ages equals new int 100. For int I equals 0, I is less than 100, so that's from 0 to 99, and then we increase by 1 each time we loop. So system.out the print ages indexed by I. So I here starts with 0, and then on the next loop it becomes 1, 2, up to the 99th index 99. That's the 100th element. So you notice we are printing 100 variables or 100 values, but it will be shorter because of using array. So just try to imagine if we have 100 variables which are not arrays, which is not an array, and then we try to print them. So that will be a very lengthy code. Coding guidelines. It is usually better to initialize or instantiate the array right away after you declare, for example, the declaration. So this one is better than doing it this way. Okay, so here we declare, then we instantiate. Here it is declared, and then on the next line instantiated. So this one is a better way of doing your code. Number 2, the elements of an n element array have indices from 0 to n minus 1. Note that there is no array element ARR with the index of n. This will result in an array index out of bounds exception. So if you see this error, then that means you have an index in your array that is higher than the required index, or higher than n minus 1. Remember, you cannot resize an array. Array length. In order to get the number of elements in an array, you can use the length field of an array. So the length field of an array returns the size of the array. It can be used by writing the array name dot length. So that gives us the length of the array. So for example, public starting point main. So integer ages equals new int 100. So for int I equals 0, I is lesser than, instead of lesser than 100, we use lesser than ages dot length I plus plus. So why is this better? Let's say for example, along the way, I want to change my size of array to 50. So if I change this to 50, in our previous example, I also have to change this to 50. So I'm going to replace two values. What if I have more? I have here other loops, which I hard coded also the length of the array. So you have to edit everything. So what if you miss something? Then your program may not run as it should be. But here, every time you replace this size, the size of the array, then there's no need to replace this part of your code, because this will always return whatever is the size of the array. Coding guidelines. So when creating for loops to process the elements of an array, use the array's object's length field in the condition statement of the for loop. This will allow the loop to adjust automatically, just like what I've said a while ago, for different size arrays. Declare the sizes of the array in a Java program using named constants. So instead of hard coding, it's better to use named constants to make them easy to change. For example, final int, that means if you use the final, that means it is a constant. Int array size equals 1000. So int ages array equals new int and then array size. So this is equivalent to 1000, but it's actually a declared constant. So we just use final to declare a constant. So that's a better way of declaring the size of an array, or specifying the size of an array. So next, let's take a look at multi-dimensional arrays. Multi-dimensional arrays are implemented as arrays of arrays. So it's an array inside an array. Multi-dimensional arrays are declared by appending the appropriate number of brackets after the array name. So for example, integer, then we have two brackets, 2d is equal to new int 512 128. So we have a two-dimensional array, or we can view that as these are the number of rows and these are the number of columns, or depending on how you view it. But in my case, I usually refer to the first number as my row and columns. Now if it is a three-dimensional array, so we have three brackets. So 3d equals new car, then maybe row, column, and then height. Now how about declaring the values at once? String, so we have dogs equals, and then you notice this is an array, another array, another array, another array inside an array. So we have an array inside an array. So this is 0 0 1 1 1 0 1. So these are row 0 1, and this is our column 0 column 1, and this is row 0 row 1 row 2 and row 3. Or of course row 3 is the fourth row. Multi-dimensional array. To access an element in a multi-dimensional array is just the same as accessing the elements in one-dimensional array, but of course we have to specify two indices. For example, to access the first element in the first row of the array dogs, we write system.out.print dogs 0 0. So that's the first row and first column, so that's the first element. So this will print the string Terry on the screen. So Terry because that's the first row and first column. So what if I want to print gray? So I should specify 0, 1, 2, that's row 2, column 1. So if I place here 2, 1, then that will print gray. Okay. So summary. Arrays. So we have learned how to define arrays, how to declare arrays, how to instantiate, and how to use instantiation and constructor in array, how to access an element, the length field, and also we have viewed multidimensional array. So thank you very much for viewing this video, and maybe on the next video we'll have more examples of programs in manipulating arrays. Thank you very much.